You're listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set out to bring you news, interesting topics and interviews with people, mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode number 526. I am your host, I am the Eggman, and I am joined by the ever-present Pontus Bookman. Alright, Trips?
Hey son. Well, ever-present, I'm not sure. I missed last week. Mostly
present.
Mostly present. I'm mostly here now, actually.
Like, if we were to do a percentage of shows that you've been on, I think you'd be in the high 99s. So I'm rounding up. I'm rounding up in the interest of simplicity.
This is actually, I think, the first time that we have no host from last week on this week's episode. So it means it's a totally different podcast now. We've totally replaced all the one person who did the last episode.
We are like the sugar babes of podcasting. So audience members, if there's any continuity errors between last week and this week, feel free to point it out to us. But let's just say on air, fantastic job by András last week, holding the fort on his own, right?
Yes, he didn't get a lot of notice either, so I just had to bail out in the last minute, and he was a real trooper who carried it on by himself. Very good.
Okay. What about the rumours that you were arrested, Pontus? Were you in jail?
Deny. I can neither confirm or deny.
Okay. All right. Pontus is showing me his ankles right now, by the way, listeners, just to prove that there's no tags on them. Okay, so...
Well, happily, I can do this from home, so I don't have to break my parole promise, or whatever you call that when you get a...
He's managed to negotiate a sweetheart deal. Where have we heard that before? Okay, let's get away from that. So well done last week, András. Pontus, good to have you back. For me, it's my first time back since
QED, I think.
Since QED, yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Took you a long time to invite me back. What have I done wrong?
I think you did well. You deserve a second chance, I think.
Okay. Phoenix from the flames, everybody. This is me rising from it. It's great to be back.
It's great to have you back.
And, lots going on. So, dear listeners, welcome to the show. We are going to get fired straight on in there, and we're starting with This Week in Skeptical History, also known as TWISH.
So, I will be András for today and deliver this TWISH thingy. So, easy question for you, Brian, to kick this off. What is the most famous Academy Award-winning shipwreck of all time?
Okay, it's not going to be Castaway with Tom Hanks. Okay, it's going to... let's go for that terrible movie, Titanic.
Yes. Leon Kate. Very true, of course. So, we're talking about Titanic. So, on the 10th of April, 1912, so it's 114 years ago, the British ocean liner RMS Titanic left Southampton, headed for New York. Do you know what RMS stands for?
I'm going to say, something marine.
I had to look it up,
Royal Marine Service.
Actually, it's a Royal Mail Ship.
Oh,
so
okay.
This was something that ships, and probably maybe still today, I don't know, but ships under contract to carry mail for the British Royal Mail could call themselves RMS. And I did not know that. So I guess
did carry females as well. It was an equality ship, but okay, so it was Royal Mail Ship. Okay,
MAIL. So, I guess those letters did not get there this time, as people may know. Not to spoil anything about the story.
Unless any of them were addressed to Davy Jones.
Could be. Davy Jones, Locker, or whatever, all that jazz.
Yeah.
Anyway, with an estimated 2,224, that's a very precise number to be an estimate, but that's what I'm reading, people online, Titanic started on its maiden voyage, and of course, as we all know, it ended in a big disaster, about 1,500 deaths, by far the most well-known peacetime maritime disaster. But not the worst. As I was researching this, I found out that there are actually 5 others that are even worse. One of them was the Sultana, I don't know. It was on the Mississippi in 1865. 1,547 deaths. So that's just a little bit. And then there are 4 others. They were all happened after Titanic. So I don't think we should bother getting into them today. Leave them for another show, perhaps. Terrible Agreed. As they may have been. But anyway, we know the Titanic story. We've seen the film. But I wanted to focus on the inevitable myths and conspiracy theories that are connected with the Titanic, because, well, that's what we do here on this show. So there are 3 major myths that still circulate that I will talk about. I'll take them one by one. Big thank you to another Brian Dunning, who went through these myths on a Skeptoid episode back in...
Yep. He's the second best Brian in skepticism.
Yes. That was in 2018, so maybe people haven't heard this before, and also I did a little extra research. So, myth number 1, a coal fire sunk the Titanic. So there was a documentary in 2017 that claims that an uncontrolled coal fire, if not exactly caused, at least was the main reason for the disaster. This was championed by the Irish journalist Seanan, I think that's how you pronounce that, Seanan Maloney. Sounds very Irish.
I'm going to take your word for it.
Yeah, I don't
think
know.
I can pronounce it.
I'm Swedish, I don't know, but something like that. And that was a documentary called Titanic, The New Evidence. And Maloney builds on the actual fact that there was a fire on board. That was true.
Oh, it was a known thing, yes.
Yeah. And it was already there when the Titanic left port. It was discovered on the day of the departure, but it had probably been smoldering for several days. And this is not so strange as you may think. Apparently this happened quite a lot back in the day. Coal-powered steamships sometimes had this problem because great piles of coal tend to ignite spontaneously. The coal often generates aerosols that cause heating, and if you have enough oxygen in the compartment where it is stored, it can self-ignite. And this fire on the Titanic was finally put out 3 days later, on the 13th of April, so 2 days before the ship sank. Maloney doesn't claim that this happened instead of the iceberg thing. But according to him, the fire contributed to the sinking in 3 ways. First, it made the ship go faster than they planned to, because they had to shovel get rid of the coal, and also had to get to the bottom of the pile of coal to put out the fire. So they steamed ahead faster than planned. Secondly, they had to get to New York quickly to beat the inevitable explosion. As he puts it, there's no inevitable explosion, as I understand. This was something he made up in the documentary. There's no imminent risk of explosion from this. And thirdly, the fire weakened the structure of the hull, he says, so much that it caused the structure to fail when the ship hit the iceberg. So he does believe in the iceberg. He does not deny that.
Jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams, but coal fire does?
Could be. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Why not? So all of these points have been debunked, most thoroughly in a 48-page academic paper called Titanic, Fire and Ice, which was written by 7 maritime
George
historians.
R.R. Martin. No. Okay.
No. No, these were academics, people who knew what they were writing about, I am told anyway. And this paper found fatal flaws on all the significant things that Maloney claimed. The paper used to be available online, but when I was trying to get it now, I couldn't find it until I turned to the Wayback Machine. So I will put a link to the Wayback Machine in our show notes. I think that's good enough. And
Good.
So consider that myth debunked. Then we have number 2. Titanic was sunk by a conspiracy to create the Federal Reserve. In this theory, the Rothschild banking family and J.P. Morgan and Jesuits, nice triumvirate there, they conspired together to create the U.S. Federal Reserve, and to do this, they arranged the whole thing by first building the Titanic, then getting all the opponents of the Federal Reserve to sail on it, and then sink it. Seems like a pretty complex way of getting rid of people. These opponents were the millionaires Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and John Jacob Astor IV. And these three people were indeed on Titanic, and they did die in the disaster. But depending on which flavor this conspiracy that you want to choose, either the Jesuits ordered J.P. Morgan to build a ship, or Morgan ordered the Rothschilds to do it, and or the Jesuits placed a priest on board, and the priest's task was to order the captain to ram an iceberg. I think that's a bit far-fetched.
Yeah, more than a little bit.
Well, if it was true, it succeeded because the Federal Reserve was created 2 years later in 1914, but by 1912 it was already well underway, and killing these three people would probably not have stopped that anyway. And there's no big evidence, actually, that these three millionaires that we talk about had much to do with the Federal Reserve in any case. So this is just taking some facts that you can verify and then weaving some sort of saga or fiction around it all. And
of course, sprinkling on a little bit of anti-Semitism where you're at it.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Anyway, so number 3. It was actually Titanic's sister ship, Olympic, that
the
sank.
Olympic? Yeah, this one I've heard.
Yeah, I've heard about that before as well. The story goes that the Olympic had collided in 1911, so 1 year before, with a Navy ship, causing extensive damage that would have been expensive to fix. And since the insurance company would not cover the damage because they put the blame on the owners, the White Star Lines, the owners thought that, maybe we can sink the Olympic as if it was the Titanic, and then we'll get the insurance money anyway. So they switched the ships, and they switched the nameplates and everything on a big, very elaborate thing, of course, and should have had to include quite a few people to do all of that as well. And in any case, it's not true. There's loads of evidence that it didn't happen. And also, the main problem there, maybe, with the whole idea, or one main problem, is that it wouldn't make any financial sense. The total financial loss of the sinking of the Titanic was around $9.4 million in those days. And the insurance were only for $5 million. But importantly, the damage to the Olympic would cost less than $200,000 to fix. So nobody would sacrifice that big ship, not the 9.4 million ship, to save $200,000. And also, we know now that it was always known that the ships were not entirely identical, and we have photos from the Titanic wreck on the seabed, and it's definitely not the Titanic. It's definitely not the Olympic. I'm sorry for spreading misinformation here. It's not the Olympic, it is the Titanic. For one thing, the hull of the Titanic was number 401, not number 400. And this was stamped on all over the place, many, many places. And you can see it in many pictures taken at the sea bottom, except in some pictures which have been photoshopped to show 400 instead. But,
of course. There is a very good debunking video about this particular conspiracy theory by Miles Power. If you want to hop onto YouTube, folks, and search for Miles, Myles, Power, and then Titanic, you should find it there. It's very, very good and worth a watch.
Oh, good.
And it talks about the hull numbers and various other strong pieces of evidence that show the Titanic was the Titanic and the Olympic was the Olympic, and there was no confusion between the two.
Yeah. Very good, very good. No, I think this is something that always happens with big things like this. We know this as skeptics, that every time something big and very traumatic is happening, then people, either because they want fame or just because they can't accept that something that big happens without somebody, a bad guy, being behind it, you invent these scenarios, or you think you see connections where there are none.
Exactly.
But the sad truth is that 1,500 people died, and that's the real tragedy to remember. And the voyage leading up to it all started this week in 1912 on the 10th of April.
Yeah. And remember, folks, there are bad guys out there doing lots of bad things. You don't have to invent stuff. Really, if you're running short of bad guys doing bad things, give me a shout. We'll send you a long list. You don't have to make anything up.
Good point.
Okay, and I should say as well, in terms of this week in history, 8 years ago today, in 2018, I was also a guest host on episode number 119. I just got a Facebook memory for that today. Apparently I stepped in for Yelena many years ago. So, folks, I do crop up just every once in a while.
You're a veteran of the
pop
show.
Up my head. Yeah, I'm a veteran substitute, which is nice. Okay, let's get moving on now. If you've got that sinking feeling already, folks, just wait until you hear our news stories. Here we go. Okay, kicking off the news is what I'm going to describe as a potentially good news story. This one comes from the lovely people at Humanists UK, and the headline is, "Non-religion is the new normal. 6 in 10 under 35s have no religion. New analysis finds."
But I hear they're selling so many Bibles to young people. What's that?
Apparently. Well, let's come to that in a moment, shall we? So yeah, folks, if you're like one of the more grumpy of the old people and you've got it in for the younger generation, well, just take a step back because the kids are doing all right, actually. So this is new analysis based on the most recent British social attitudes survey data, specifically on the topic of religion. It finds that 61% of 16 to 34-year-olds identify as having no religion. So let's be very clear, that doesn't mean they're atheist. It just means they are not affiliated with any of the, let's say, the big hitter organised religions. Less than 3% of them identify as Church of England or Anglican. And that is compared to 21% of those aged 70 or over. So, like, if you ever want to take a look at the sort of generation gap in terms of religiosity, I think that is a fantastic example. And Church of England appears to be dying a slow and painful death as far as we can see, but hopefully they'll go to heaven afterwards, so they'll be fine, don't worry, folks. So these findings, announced by Humanists UK, come days after the Bible Society was forced to retract its widely reported Quiet Revival report. Have you heard of this Quiet Revival report, Pontus?
I have, but I haven't heard about the retraction.
Yeah, they have very quietly removed their revival report, so after, much pressure from people saying, are your numbers correct? Every other piece of data we've got does not indicate any form of revival, particularly in terms of attendance at Christian churches in the UK. Unless, of course, the Quiet Revival is entirely ninjas. Maybe it's ninjas.
Very quiet. Attending
churches. And obviously, a ninja's never going to respond to a survey. A ninja's not going to be seen in the church, right? But they're there.
They're First there, rule Pontus. Of ninjas, don't reply on polls.
Don't reply to social attitude surveys, But apparently the YouGov polling company identified fraudulent responses in the data on which it was based. Now, I don't know the extent of the number of fraudulent responses, but I think we've all heard plenty of examples before about badly administered surveys in terms of like how they target people and how they phrase their questions and so on and so forth. So there could be benign reasons for that data not being good, but it seems like there's some fraudulent data in there as well. So Bible Society, well, we don't want to accuse them of lying because that would be very unchristian of them. So maybe they just made a mistake and they have apparently retracted their Quiet Revival report.
But they didn't make a big press release about that. We'll take this away because we were wrong.
Yeah, what a surprise. So let's look at this data that Humanists UK have teased out of the British Social Attitude Survey. So 60.9% of 16 to 34-year-olds have no religion. Let's play a guessing game. Pontus, what percentage do you think have said Roman Catholic?
You said the Anglican were only 3%.
Anglican, yet less than 3%, 2.6%. Yep.
This puts me in a that puzzles me, because I wouldn't say that the Catholics were bigger than the Anglican Church in England. That would be very strange. So 0.5%? I don't know.
No, it's higher. There's
what?
Higher. Roman Catholic is, but still not very impressive, by the way. 5.9% for that.
Uh-huh.
So 13.1% for non-Christian religion.
Okay, that's a big religion, that one.
That is the one that the roundabout painters don't like the most, probably, included in those. Other Christian is 15.6%. And then we have 1.9% as refused/don't know. So people, refuse to answer that question, or maybe aren't sure about their answer.
Maybe they were ninjas, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's the ninja contingent, probably. The contingent ninja. Right. So, I mean, it's very nice to see that the younger generation, the 16 to 34-year-olds, are certainly less religious than their elder counterparts. If we look at all of the data, and like all of adults, we're sitting at the moment at 49% that have no religion. That does count as a full majority, though, because again, you've got 2% in total that say don't know/refused. So
we still win.
Half of the people who actually answered that question in any way are saying no religion. So, yeah. Interestingly, though, I did jump a couple of years back in the British Social Attitudes Survey, and the full adult population of no religion was actually over 50% before. So it's actually gone down slightly, which Humanists UK don't appear to have mentioned. I might have made a mistake when I was looking back. I did dig back to previous articles. There may be some indication that no religion as a whole has ever so slightly decreased, but there may be some polling differences, particularly after the pandemic and such like that, that may explain that, right? But it would be interesting to hear what their take on that is. But, in terms of if we're looking towards the future, we're certainly seeing a big shift in young people. And, I think that's a good thing. There was a statement from Andrew Copson, the Chief Executive of Humanists UK. So let me give you that. He says, the retraction of the Bible Society's Quiet Revival report was welcome, but it should not distract from the more fundamental point. The data was always implausible because it contradicted decades of rigorous survey evidence and even the Anglican and Catholic Church's own attendance data. So the British Social Attitudes Survey is the gold standard for a reason. It shows clearly and consistently that Britain has become a majority non-religious country, that younger generations are leading that change, and that there's no evidence of any reversal. Mr. Copson then goes on to say that it's time for our public institutions, from Parliament to our schools, to catch up with the reality of who the British people actually are. And obviously that's part of Humanists UK's campaigning. They're trying to do their best, certainly in terms of schools, to reduce the number of religious schools that are out there, which I would certainly applaud.
Yeah. And we've talked about religious education in the UK quite a lot the last couple of months. And I also from the Humanists UK, that they are fighting this. There are changes coming, or at least people are calling for changes there, because it doesn't make sense the way it's done today.
Indeed. Well, let's see how that all pans out. I'll not cross my fingers too much. I'll not hold my breath for religious schools to become a thing of the past. We'll see, though.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I have some more good news. So, many times we bring up bad things and misery.
Excellent.
But we should keep positive when there is reason to do so. The WHO World Health Day was this week on the 7th of April. And this year's theme was something I could not ignore. It was Together for Health, Stand with Science.
Lovely.
So how can we not talk about that? I know WHO is not always perfect. We have many times criticized their support for alternative medicine, but they do a lot of good things as well, and they have a lot of influence. So we need to keep an eye on what they're doing. So World Health Day has been celebrated by WHO since the late 1940s, and it is held to mark WHO's founding and is seen as an opportunity by the organization to draw worldwide attention to a subject of major importance to global health each year. That's part of their statement. So in connection with this, every year, WHO organizes international, regional and local events on the day related to a particular theme. The celebration is acknowledged by various governments and non-governmental organizations around the world who have interest in public health issues. And they say that this year's observance launches a year-long campaign celebrating the power of scientific collaboration to protect the health of people, animals, plants and the planet. So health of the planet perhaps is also included there, I'm not sure. The campaign spotlights both scientific achievements and the multilateral cooperation needed to turn evidence into action. I like that, evidence into action.
Nice.
Yeah, so this time around they call for governments, scientists, health workers and partners and the public to 1. Stand with science by engaging with evidence, facts and science-based guidance to protect health. 2. Rebuild trust in science and public health. And 3. Support science-led solutions for a healthier future. Very happy that I see no mention of traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, homeopathic medicine, or so-called medicine in this. They are repeatedly just highlighting the words science, evidence, and facts. And that's very refreshing to hear.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so especially with what's going on nowadays in the US, of course, but that's another story and a terrible one if that. So let's hope that WHO start to apply this emphasis on evidence also on their own guidelines, because I think they have some homework to do there to weed out some of the TCM, Ayurveda, homeopathy references and other things. I'm not betting on that will happen, but at least now they're saying the right words.
Well done for the WHO. I would imagine like they are very careful about how and when they communicate their, let's say, pro-science messaging versus when they communicate their pro-alternative medicine information. And hey, listeners, if there's any of you that work for the WHO or you know anyone that works for the WHO, come and give us some inside information. There must be people, like the people who are doing, that campaign about standing up for science must be rolling their eyes every time the WHO mention like traditional Chinese medicine and stuff. So there's got to be internal rumblings going on there, right?
Yeah, let's hope for the good guys to win that battle.
Hope so. Okay. So, in terms of medicine and health, we're moving on to a new topic now. And let me maybe give a little bit of a content warning.
Oops.
If you're having your dinner at the moment, folks, maybe just put the food aside for a while or pause this recording until you've finished eating. Because, we have some potentially unpleasant content coming up here. So, this particular story comes from LP, and the headline is Eat Tapeworm Eggs, Lose Weight, the terrifying Victorian practice whose myth refuses to die.
Oh boy.
So yeah, we're going to talk tapeworm, folks. So from the story, women have gone to extreme lengths to fit into their era's beauty canon, and the article itself is there to examine the truths and lies behind the supposed Ozempic of the Victorian era. So it references a recent body horror film called The Ugly Stepsister. Have you seen that movie, Pontus?
No, I haven't.
Nor have I. Never heard of it. Anyway, apparently the movie features a scene that is particularly disturbing. In it, the film's main character, Elvira, eats a tapeworm egg in order to lose weight. So this parasite that inhabits certain animals and can infect a person who eats raw or undercooked meat, put a pin in that, we're coming back to that, adheres to the intestine and grows by feeding on its host's meals. So we are talking about a flat, whitish worm that can measure between 6.5 feet up to 39 feet. What's that in metric? I don't know.
A lot.
It's a lot, right?
Too much. Too long.
Yeah, too long to be inside the human body. It depends on whether it comes from a pig or a cow. And, obviously that is the stuff of horror movies, probably hence the reason it made it into that film. So the taking of that from the movie sort of harkens back to the good old days of ye old-timey Victorian beauty measures. Back then it was less heroin chic, it was more tuberculosis trendy. So in the race to Victorian perfection, a lot of toxic practices were documented, such as inhaling ammonia, consuming arsenic, and of course wearing corsets, which was really not good for you. The tapeworm diet, however, has always been somewhat misted by a thick air of urban legend. Now, there are some Instagram sites and other places online that claim the swallowing of tapeworm eggs was commonplace back in those days. But, my sceptical friends, historians have apparently cast some serious doubt on that. So one particular example is the opera singer from the 1950s, Maria Callas. I'm sure you're aware of her work, Pontus.
Well, yeah, I know of her, yes.
Oh, really? You do?
Yeah,
I didn't.
I do.
Okay.
No, I do.
Folks, if you ever want to know how cultured the various members of this podcast are, I think we've just seen it there, okay? Pontus is definitely a man who knows his opera. I am not. Okay, well, there you go. Maria Callas was reported to have self-inflicted herself with tapeworms under medical supervision. Those are the rumours that went around. Realistically, though, it turns out it is much more likely she did inflict those worms on herself, but it was from eating a raw steak, a steak tartare that she ate. So it's much more likely that she just had a penchant for undercooked or not cooked steak, and that is where she got the tapeworm from.
Wow.
There's also a thought that the amount of weight that she lost, she wouldn't have lost that much weight even if it was the tapeworm, right? So I think there's a suspicion that she might have been doing other things or had other health issues, because remember, folks, everyone can get health issues that can cause weight loss. It doesn't have to be
tapeworms,
tapeworms or just proper old school pressure on women to look that, especially opera singers. Surely opera singers of all women are allowed to be a little bit more on the bone, shall we say, right? So it's incredibly sad that maybe this person was under pressure to lose weight. So, but we know how misogynistic the world is, so not really that much of a surprise. There are, however, pictures that crop up of vintage advertisements for sanitized tapeworm tablets. Now, Pontus, I am going to try and paste that into... I'm going to paste it into our Zoom chat just now. There we go. I want you to open up that picture and...
I don't know if I dare, but okay. Here we go.
Can you get it? Okay.
Fat Banished, it says.
Yeah. Can you describe this poster to us?
Oh, fat is apparently the enemy that is shortening your life. Eat, 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 and always stay thin. Okay, so when is this from?
So, well, it is purported to be from somewhere in the early 1900s, right? It's got the look and feel of one of those sort of old time sort of snake oil photos, like Miracle Cure photos, but there's a pile of food and a very well dressed lady hovering over the top of that food, and it's got sort of fat banished, easy to swallow, and some pretty unpleasant text about sort of avoiding fat and staying thin, enough to make you hate your own body, which is probably what the intention was, right? But it turns out, and that picture and other ones like it kind of do the rounds in a lot of these sort of sites, but there is more than a fair amount of suspicion that is a fake picture that's been faked up much more recently and has sort of taken some themes from other advertisements and, just added in the tapeworms part to it. So I guess happily that's not real. So, historical facts about the use of tapeworm pills seem to be inconsistent and include those kind of fake pictures, right? And that's from a parasitological study authored by Immaculada Zarzo, J. Francisco Marino, and a few other researchers from the University of Valencia. The report pinpoints the birth of the myth as 1912, when the Washington Post, an otherwise very respectable newspaper. So in 1912, the Washington Post published a sensationalist article on the subject, which was then subsequently cited in equally fallacious accounts until apparently the American Medical Association discredited the piece in the 1930s. So it took a couple of decades of this rumour and nonsense spreading before the American Medical Association sort of said, no, none of that's true, right? But it tells you everything you need to know about sort of urban myths, legends, lazy journalism, and how those sort of sensationalist claims can do the rounds, right? And in fact, it sort of came to light recently, apparently one of the Kardashians on one of the shows sort of made a joke about having a tapeworm to lose weight. In fact, I remember as a younger, less enlightened person making jokes about having tapeworms. So it's kind of like in the ether around us that is a thing that some people did or sometimes happens, and what a great way to lose weight. And it's really pernicious, right? But just to end this piece, right, I want to make it very clear. Mariela Martinez, clinical nutritionist to Ancient and Brave, says there is no beneficial physiological mechanism behind this practice. The potential weight loss that some people experience was not a therapeutic effect, but rather the consequence of adverse side effects. So in the style of American adverts for medication, I am going to read some of these potential adverse side effects. Here we go. Tapeworms may cause appetite loss, persistent digestive issues, diarrhea, intestinal inflammation, limited absorption of essential nutrients, malnutrition, anemia, generalized fatigue, micronutrient deficiency, loss of body mass, severe and irreversible neurological consequences. Investments can go up as well as down.
Right.
There we go. So,
very good.
Moral of the story: don't
ingest
tapeworms. But the good news is, I don't think anybody is. I really don't think anybody is.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. And it is appalling that the pressure on, especially on women, to be very, very thin, is not just still here. It's getting worse. I understand.
It's getting worse. And it's working its way into the male population as well. But it's definitely mostly women. Yeah. But look, hey, as I said with the Titanic one, folks, you don't need to make up bad people. And you also don't need to make up horrible things people do to their bodies to try and conform to some idea of attractiveness. There's plenty of real stuff out there to try and rage against.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Rant over from me. And at this point, we're going to end the news section and we're going to jump over to Pontus, and he's going to tell us who's been really right or who's been really wrong. Here we go.
Yes. So this week's really wrong comes to us from Peter Åkerlund, who just became a patron, actually. Thank you very much. He contacted us at patreon.com/TheESP, which you all can do, of course. Please support us if you can. It really helps a lot. Anyway, Peter suggested that we mentioned a Finnish politician by the name of Päivi Räsänen. I hope I got that fairly correct. I'm not sure. She is a physician by education and has been politically active since the early 1990s. She is a member of parliament in Finland. She was the chairwoman of the Christian Democrats there between 2004 and 2015. And she was the Minister of the Interior of Finland between 2011 and 2015. So that's she's high up. She's one of the more established politicians there. She's no longer the leader of the Finnish Christian Democratic Party, but she's still active. She's, of course, a devout Christian. And she has not been shy about spreading her misguided religious views over the years. Already in 2004, she was behind a booklet published by the Luther Foundation Finland, which contained arguments against same-sex relationships. That was a no-no according to this booklet because it says so in the Bible. She has also put these ideas forward in writings on websites of the Luther Foundation Finland and the Evangelical Lutheran Mission Diocese of Finland, and in statements on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and wherever you can publicize these things, even in radio, at least one radio interview. In 2019, she reissued her booklet from 2004 as a response to having received criticism for her later statements. And that same year, she criticized the Church of Finland's collaboration with Pride, with the Pride movement on social media, saying, "How can the church be proud of sin and shame?" End quote. That's what she said. But the interesting thing is that she got sued for incitement against a minority group. And it was deemed especially troubling that she is a person of such influence and has political power, and that her campaigns on the issue could actually lead to real harm because of that. She was acquitted in both first and second level of the courts and got some attention internationally. This led her to be invited to the US, where she met up in Congress, or with some Congress members and senators, including Marco Rubio. And of course, they all see her as being persecuted for practicing her free speech and religious freedom.
Why on earth are the Americans importing bigots? They've got enough of their own over there already.
Finally, they found somebody from abroad that they could relate to, I guess.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a nice story.
Yeah. But now comes the twist. The case was appealed again to the Finnish Supreme Court, and on 26th of March this year, they found her guilty of hate speech against gay persons. The court ordered her to pay a fine of 1,800 euros. Not very much.
Wow.
But
okay.
It's the principle of the thing, I guess, that's important. But I guess I don't know how well that goes, because now, of course, she is a martyr for her cause, and her freedom of speech and freedom of religion is violated, and she has been persecuted, yada, yada, yada. And I'm sure she feels that is for political reasons, not for being a bigot.
Yeah, that's really straight out of the religious bigots playbook, isn't it? You know, if you're vindicated by the courts, then it's a great victory for freedom of speech and your expression of religion. If you're found guilty by the courts, then you can play Jesus. You can play
exactly.
You know, the punished martyr, can't you? It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, with a fine of 1,800 euros. That's, just cost of doing business, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I can imagine the donations that she probably would have got when she was over visiting Marco Rubio and friends would greatly exceed that, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I'm not a legal expert, and I don't know where the line should be drawn for freedom of speech in a legal sense. It's not an easy call to make, but I do agree that her being a public figure makes it that much worse. If a rando guy on the street would say these things, he probably would get away with it because nobody would be listening. But if you've been the Minister of the Interior and you are a prominent political figure, then you can actually influence people. So that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In any case, whether or not she deserved it or not, for her consistent hate speech against the gay community, Päivi Räsänen gets this week's award for being really wrong.
Well-earned award. Okay, so from a Finnish MP who should finish being an MP, we are moving on to the finish of our show, and we're going to end, as we always do, with a quote. Okay, so today's quote comes from author Jules Verne. And the quote is, "Reality provides us with facts so romantic that imagination itself could add nothing to them." That, I
So
think, is
poetic.
pretty damn beautiful.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, that it comes from a very notable fiction author.
Yeah.
There's one thing that we talk about as skeptics, that like sometimes the truth is boring, or at least it's less exciting than what's made up by, let's say, true believers of, the paranormal or what have you. But the counter argument to that is there's so much marvel and wonder to be found in the real world and real facts that I think we should be celebrating that. And this quote, I think, perfectly encapsulates that.
Yeah.
Now, before we sign off, right, I had a little look at Jules Verne. So apparently he is the second most translated author in the world.
After
Since
God, I
1979.
guess, since the Bible must be number one.
The Bible is not number one because the Bible has mostly anonymous authors and does not make it onto the list.
Who's number one then?
Well, I was going to ask you, Pontus.
Oh.
Who do you think is number one? Any takes?
Conan Doyle, maybe?
It is not
Shakespeare?
Conan Doyle. Shakespeare, very good guess, number 3 on the list. And I hope audience members at home are guessing this as well. So think of a crime writer.
Oh, I get them all mixed up. I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, Dan Brown, maybe.
Oh, I'm delighted to say it's not Dan Brown.
Okay.
No.
Well, it was very successful, though.
It was Agatha Christie.
Oh, of course it was.
So yeah, my immediate thought was Shakespeare would be at number 1. Just when I heard, you can't hear any fact about somebody being number 2 in this and not want to find out who number 1 is. That, dear listeners, is an encapsulation of the human spirit of a thirst for knowledge, right? And we have just quenched that thirst of yours, dear listeners. You are so welcome. What better way to end the show, Pontus, right?
Perfect. Thank you very much for being here, Brian.
It's been great to be back. And listeners, I'm assuming that András is going to survive his trip in Turkey. I know he's had to be doing a lot of research. I'm sure he'll tell you all about it on next week's show.
Hope so.
Without further ado, let us bring the show to an end. Pontus, thank you so much for being alongside me today.
Thanks a lot.
And listeners, get up, yeah!
Hey-do!
This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@TheESP.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu. Follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social. Like us on Facebook or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
All right, shall we go for it?
Yes, I am recording. Just whenever you're ready.
All right, here we go. Oh, I don't have my...
What?
I don't have my kazoo. I think... Oh, wait a minute.
Okay, kazoo coming up.
A second.
Kazoo coming up. Of course. Right. Oh, perfect. Now I feel really at home.
You must be delighted to get to edit those out, Pontus. Sorry about that.
No, I'm not going to leave that in.
Okay, you can do that. I don't mind. I'm fine with that.
Why not?